JSO is on the scene after what they tell us is an undetermined death on the west side, specifically at 103rd, right there.
We want to get right out to Cameron Eppinger. He's live on the scene right now with the latest, what we know at this point. Cam.
Are we ready for an update? I'm Cameron Eppinger. We were live on the west side, and we're about to hear from an update from Sergeant Ford on this undetermined death. We're going to direct our attention to Sergeant Ford. He's going to talk to us right now and give us an update on this undetermined death. Sarge, are you ready? Sergeant Ford, what can you tell us about what happened?
Good morning. My name is Sergeant Chuck Ford. I'm with the Jacksonville Sheriff's Office Homicide Unit. My purpose today is to come here and talk to you today and disseminate some information regarding an incident that occurred earlier today. Earlier today at approximately 3:30 a.m., an off-duty unit who was working here at Park West Hospital at 6477 103rd Street reported via his police radio of a person drove up to the hospital with a gunshot wound. That person was taken into the hospital and was treated here at the hospital with critical injuries. At the same time, we also received a secondary call at a residence close by that involved a shooting also. We believe the items are related and the incidents are related. What I can tell you right now is we have a male and a female that are involved in the shooting. We have a person of interest in custody at this time, and we have several people we are in the process of interviewing, as well as conducting the scene investigation, etc. It will be some time before I can release the information as far as who the victims are, and really, quite honestly, exactly what happened. Again, we arrived on scene probably close to 5 a.m. As you can see, the car behind me is a red vehicle. That is the vehicle that the victim was driven to the hospital in, and that vehicle will be towed away from the scene and we'll be processing that also. We contacted our partners with the State Attorney's Office. They are assisting us in the investigation for any legal issues that we may have and encounter. And as far as any evidence that we have right now, again, our crime scene detectives are here as well as at the secondary location and attempting to locate that information. As the day progresses, I'll be able to provide the community more information regarding what happened, as well as the identities of our victims.
Sergeant, this went out as an undetermined death investigation. You said critical injuries. Is the victim of the shooting still alive?
The victim, as later on in the investigation, we have determined she has passed away.
And that was Sergeant Ford with the JSO. He tells us that there was some type of shooting that happened earlier this morning and involved a male and a female. Of course, we're going to continue to stay out here and bring you more information as this story develops. For now, we're reporting live on the west side. I'm Cameron Eppinger, First Coast News, on your side.